kind of bossa nova, so she went to see Stan Getz, and we met. And when we met, she played her songs for me, and she heard me play with him. And so it was always been very integral to our relationship. And then in terms of recorded collaborations, as soon as I began recording, she was part of those projects. And then when she was recording her own projects, I was part of those. So it's always been just assumed that's what we were going to do. And now, you know, our daughter, Lizzie Loeb, or Elizabeth Loeb, you know, she's a singer, very much like her mom, plays the guitar like me, and then she's a composer, and she's really got her own style. So it's just continuing on, you know, with the same collaborative spirit, which is great. And it's, in our household, especially maybe about, let's say 10 or 15 years ago, where I was doing a lot of production, and I had my recording studio in the garage, and both my daughters were in high school, or you know, going through high school, and every day there was like musicians coming in and out in bands, and you know, one day it would be Gato Barbieri, the next day it would be Michael Brecker, and the next day it would be you know Michel Camillo or whatever, and then so it was always like all these people coming in. So it was really just part of our life, you know. Carmen would be doing the laundry, and you know, Michael Brecker would walk by, and then you know, come and say, "Hello, Carmen. You know, I'm going to play," and then you know, so it was a really awesome, very very cool existence. Yeah, I mean, the internet, the advance of computer chips and memory, and the improvement of digital recording, because at first digital recording wasn't quite as good, but within the last 15, 20 years it's gotten to be the best way to record. We're recording this interview digitally, and it comes out great. All of that, the advances have improved the ability for people to do projects in a more democratic way. In other words, when I was young, when I was starting out, if I wanted to record an album or a CD or an LP at that time, right, you had to go to a very expensive studio. You had to hire a bunch of people to work the machines and set up the microphones and all that kind of stuff. And now, you know, somebody can buy a computer and they can have GarageBand and they can do a pretty good recording, you know, for next to nothing. It's made it better in a lot of ways, but in a lot of ways there's elements of it that are missing from the old days that are a little bit sad. Because being a studio musician, for example, in New York City, I used to go from session to session and play with different musicians on every session, different kinds of music, and it was a very socially interactive thing, and the chemistry that different musicians had playing together was magical. I think a little bit of that gets lost when somebody does a track in Los Angeles and they send it to someone in New York and someone in Chicago mixes it, and it's okay, it's good, it's good, and it gets things done and it keeps the creativity going. I have nothing against it, but there is an element, or are elements, that suffer, I think. Now there is a little bit of improvement in that area now with Skype, because you can actually have somebody else, you know, like sort of listening to you. It's a little bit difficult, but yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what happens as things get even more based on the internet. My CDs and the CDs I've been involved with for the last, you know, 10 years at least, have been very much, okay, I record the basic tracks, but then a lot of overdubs and a lot of other parts get done sort of in a vacuum, because, you know, I'm playing in my house. I'll send it to Brian Culbertson, his house, and he'll play it and send it back, and Eric Marienthal, et cetera, et cetera. Like on Between Two Worlds, you know, Brian Culbertson played the trombone on Let's Go, the song, but, you know, we weren't together in the same room, you know. We talked on the phone, we sent an email, I sent him the track, he played it, okay, that's great. Fourplay, when I joined, you know, Fourplay asked me to become a member of the band when Larry Carlton left in January of this year. So I joined the band. I did one show in Florida, at the Smooth Jazz Festival in Florida. And then the next thing we did was we went into the studio to record.
All right, wow.
So it was like a big like jump. I had to compose some music for the recording. The great thing about that was that when they record, they go into a studio all together.
Okay.
And they stay all together the whole time. And it was fantastic.
Wow.
It was fantastic because it was like the old days. It was like, you know, you sit around and you say, how about this? How about that? You're playing something, Nathan will come over and say, that's great, but try this. And wow, what a great feeling. You know, Harvey Mason is in the same room, like 10 feet away from you playing the drums. So like the energy of that is quite different than hearing it in the headphones only, you know. So the album harkens back to, you know, the mystery and the magic and the romance of people playing together. And I think it shows that. As soon as people come together and you go out on the stage, like no matter what we talked about in the dressing room about playing together, Rick and I and Schilt, we went out on stage and something completely different happened because nobody knew that the guitar strap was going to be too long. Nobody knew that we would end up, all three of us, down on our knees playing. All this is taking place with the energy and the spirit of the people sitting there listening and enjoying it, and they become part of it. So there's this whole like energy and thing that exists that doesn't exist in a vacuum. It doesn't exist when you're just recording in a computer. So the album before Between Two Worlds, my album before that was called Presence. And the basic idea for that album for me was presence being the actual presence of a person.
I get it.
Okay? Because, and the importance of that in music and in life in general. Because talking on a phone is one thing, but when you're face to face with somebody, or, you know, that's why I think, you know, like even on, I mean, I'm getting kind of deep here, but on the world stage, for example, if you have the president of Israel over here and the president of Palestine over here, and they're saying one thing and he's saying another thing, and if somebody, you know, if Barack Obama says, hey, let's get together in one room and talk about this, everything changes when you're right in front of the other person, right? Because there's a feeling, there's a humanity. So it's the same thing in music. The name of the CD is Let's Touch the Sky, which is the name of a Bob James composition.
Wow, beautiful.
And I think there was a lot of different opinions about the title. It's a very democratic band. So everybody has to agree, and if people don't agree about, you know, whatever the issue is, we vote. In fact, you know, we were down to the title of the CD. There was some question about, some people felt one way, some people felt another way. The sequence of the songs, all of it, we voted on all of it. Wow. And I thought, wow, that's fantastic. And it wasn't always easy, but it came out good and everybody was happy at the end.
Oh, yeah.
So it's called Let's Touch the Sky, and I think that sums up the thing that I was talking about before, is that like the feeling that we had in the studio together was, let's go for it. Let's really reach for something. And Bob wrote this beautiful song, and that line, Let's Touch the Sky, comes from a poem by E. Cummings. And that's what it's about. It's about let's trying to take this as far as we can go.
Right.
Any element of life that brings people together. There's a lot of people are going through a difficult time right now in the world. You know, like economically and politically, and so anything that can bring people together is good. And I've always felt that music is a mysterious thing, but it really is such a unifying force, right? That, you know, sometimes I feel like, wow, I'm so lucky. I get to play music for a living, and it's not fair. You know, there's so many people that don't get to do stuff that they like for a living. But many times I'll say that to friends of mine, let's say, you know, or something like that, and they say, no, what you're doing is really important. It's really important. Music is important because it makes people better able to deal with what they have to deal with. And so I think that's true, you know. It's a responsibility, and it makes me feel better, you know, to know that if whatever little thing helps somebody's day or life, that's a great thing. Hiram is a song composed for the great guitarist Hiram Bullock, who passed away a couple of years ago, right as I was finishing up the CD, and I was trying to think if I could, you know, think of a clever name for the song that referred to some kind of story from our